Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Danny Dupree will prod Nicole into making a bold, almost reckless move, and that shove, small as it may seem at first, sets in motion a string of choices and revelations that force everyone in their orbit to confront what they really want, who they truly are, and how far they'll go to hold on to love, pride, or revenge. Reporters and soap columns have been buzzing about the scene, Danny pushing, Nicole hesitating, the almost tragic almost bedroom moment with Ted, and then the choice that lands Nicole and Carlton's bed, a decision that breaks delicate things, sparks a fistfight, and opens dusty chests that should have stayed closed. These beats are anchored in the show's coverage and spoilers, but what happens next, the private calculations, the whispered self-justifications, the small betrayals that build into catastrophe, is a landscape begging for excavation. The evening starts with champagne and confessions. Danny's voice had the edge of mischief in it, the sound of someone who has always been the family's lightning rod and has learned that a well-placed flash can alter the weather. She's not cruel. She's catalytic. She understands Nicole's 90-degree tilt toward caution the way the other woman balances safety like a shielded heirloom, and she also knows that Nicole's recent heartbreaks have left seams. Danny's suggestion, phrased like an offhand dare between sisters who used to swap clothes and secrets, is the kind of small shove that looks like fun until gravity does its slow work. Nicole hears Danny and feels, simultaneously, the soft tug of curiosity and the hard rim of memory. She remembers vows that tasted like iron and apologies that tasted like pennies. Love has been a ledger for Nicole, filled in with credits and debits, devotion paid, trust withdrawn, hopes bounced. The last time she let herself fall, the return was a bruise. Danny's push, then, is both nerve and therapy, an invitation to test whether the careful walls she's built around her heart are permanent fixtures or scaffolding that can be taken down for repair. Danny dresses the idea in flattery and in practicalities. "You deserve something reckless," she says, smiling as if daring Nicole to imagine it. "You deserve to confuse yourself with happiness for once." Nicole, who was raised at the Dupree table to prioritize dignity and duty, is flattered by the audacity of the notion. A small rebellion is offered on a napkin. She takes it like a souvenir. Around them, the party hums with a different energy. Guests chatter about philanthropy and property, the familiar currency in Fairmont Crest. The party is a performance, and Nicole, trained to perform, finds the costume that night a little looser than usual. Her hair falls in ways that make strangers look twice, and the laugh she borrows is louder than a laugh she actually feels. It is in that looseness she almost makes the wrong choice. Ted's approach is subtle and old, like a habit more than an intention. He has history with Nicole, a gravitational history that radiates in stolen glances and in the alcoves where two people once heard each other's breath like a compass. There is an awkward moment, the kind soap fans live for, when Smitty, caught in a flare of drama, misreads his cue and tries to rehearse a proposal to Martin in front of everyone, an accidental mirror that reflects the messy human tendency to dramatize love. If Leslie hadn't stepped in and shattered Smitty's staged intimacy with authority, Ted and Nicole might have drifted into a corner and let the night swallow their better judgments. But life is stubbornly full of interruptions. Leslie, with the practical cruelty of someone who negotiates the world by clearing the decks of anyone else's romance, breaks the spell. She is, in her way, a gatekeeper of consequences. Nicole finds herself adjacent to Ted in the fallout from Smitty's chaos. For a long moment they stand under the same chandelier, and the air between them is full of the ghosts of everything that had once been. The world contracts down to the space between their hands, to the possibility acute and fragile of surrender. Ted's breath is the old rhythm Nicole remembers. For a flash, she imagines the soft tease of a body she once trusted. For a flash, she thinks of forgiveness as a threshold that might not be impossible to cross. But Nicole's mind keeps the ledger open. She has an internal list of plausible futures and forbidden mistakes. She tells herself, in the voice of someone who has learned to be her own attorney, that yielding tonight would be a decision that might bring temporary solace but eternal regret. She pictures the months, the quiet mornings that follow decisions where every touch would be checked against the memory of what she gave up to make it. For Nicole, The calculus is not lust versus love, it's regret versus endurance. This is why she pulls back. When a kiss lingers like a question mark, she answers with a firm no that is not vindictive but protective. Carlton utters the scene like a rumor. He is handsome in the way men become dangerous in soap operas, polished, aware, and unreadable. He is not a villain so much as a mirror with flattering lighting. He flirts with Nicole in public. He flirts the way some people buy things in broad daylight to impress neighbors. He is single, available, and unabashed about courting within the territory. There is an argument to be made for the fairness of his pursuit. No rings, no promises, only an appetite and a proposition. He is the proposition that looks like a cure for Nicole's loneliness. He does not promise forever. He offers a deliciously uncomplicated present. Danny sees the exchange as a gamble worth taking and pushes Nicole toward it again. The logic is simple: trust your appetite, test the water, reclaim the narrative. Nicole's decision to give herself to Carlton is not a plunge so much as a series of precise steps up a staircase. There is forethought here, an acceptance that she is choosing something she knows will be incomplete. She is not naive. She is choosing to see if there is a small, salvageable fragment of herself that can be joyous. This is key. Nicole's act is not a betrayal of herself so much as an experiment in being human again. She tells herself she will be careful. She decides that to sleep with Carlton is to make a small, contained choice a test for her own heart. She does not expect fireworks. She expects a soft reset. The aftermath is immediate and merciless even when it is tender. In Carlton's apartment, the moments are brashly cinematic and shockingly mundane. Two people who have been performing roles in public discover that in private, performance gives way to small, awkward silences. They hold each other with the clumsy expertise of people who have read conduct manuals and then tried to improvise warmth. For Nicole there is comfort, not the kind that heals, but the kind that distracts. Yet under the sheets, the mind is slippery and small alarms begin. A text left unread, a name that slips out in a joke. There are tiny things called foreshadowing that only time can point to: a photo half visible on a bookshelf, an offhanded comment about investments that implies more complexity than Carlton is letting on. Nicole's instincts flicker. She is aware that she may be choosing a distraction rather than a future. Leslie, whom the world has came to know as someone who keeps files on other people's vulnerabilities like a librarian cataloging misdemeanors, chooses an exacting cruelty. She tells Ted that Nicole has slept with Carlton. The revelation doesn't happen in private. Leslie makes sure it lands where it will cause maximum commotion. Perhaps she tells him with a smile that does not reach the eyes, or perhaps she delivers the news with the dry satisfaction of someone who believes in poetic justice. Whatever the tone, the result is the same. Ted hears the news as if from a radio in another room, and his reaction is immediate and violent in the way hurt people are. Carried by pride and humiliation, Ted confronts Carlton. This is the spectacle the soaps were invented for: male temperaments colliding over territory defined by a woman. As if love is property and anger is the rightful heir. They argue with a moral righteousness that is, for each, internally coherent. Carlton insists he was within his rights. He is single, he says. He courted Nicole openly. He did not break vows. His logic is technical and, in a court of moral arithmetic, plausible. Ted's fury, in contrast, is messy. He speaks not only for himself but for all the unpaid debts of affection he believes Nicole owes him. He is enraged not solely because she chose Carlton but because the choice is a public ledger of rejection. The fight that erupts is ugly, a collision of fists and words, a private war that masquerades as civility. They hit each other the way people who once loved the same things hit, with the memory of tenderness as a secondary assault. The room becomes a small arena. The surrounding neighborhood, which trades on decorum, suddenly tastes of blood and adrenaline. Words are thrown like cheap glass, accusations, old grievances, claims about fidelity that rewrite the past to justify the present. Carlton accuses Ted of assuming a right he never earned. Ted accuses Carlton of stealing a second chance. The argument spirals, from Nicole to who has more right to be hurt, to who is a hypocrite, to who has the moral authority to judge. Neither man concedes. The fight ends in bruises, both literal and reputational, and in the righteous exhaustion that follows when people have emptied themselves of restraint. Days pass and they are long in the way a season of drought is long. Ted's stoicism cracks. He is a man who finds it hard to forgive himself because he is certain he has failed twice with Nicole already. The social scripts he clings to make him replay errors until they are etched into his bones. He withdraws, and in that withdrawal, an old presence appears at the periphery. Leslie. She is a figure of contradictory comfort, someone whose edge usually slices complications, yet who offers Ted the small warmth of attention in a moment of weakness. Leslie is not a saint, she is pragmatic, opportunistic, and intensely aware of how attention can be a currency. She has history with Ted, or at least a history of proximity, and the distance between them narrows when grief and loneliness conspire. There is a slow seduction here, not purely of flesh but of logic. Leslie offers Ted someone who understands his shame without needing to extract payment for it. She listens to his confessions like a priest who keeps secrets for a fee. Ted, brittle and raw, finds in her a softness that seems like an answer. There is a scene where they sit in a dimly lit room with a bottle between them, where words are traded like currency and promises are casually given. Leslie is patient. She nudges Ted with memories and spells them into a narrative where he is a wounded hero and she is the only one capable of patching him up. Ted's reasoning becomes clouded by hunger for solace. He tells himself this is not betrayal, it is survival. But the watchers, the audience inside the show, feel the danger. Leslie is a known quantity in their community, complicated, maybe damaged, and with inclinations that have not always been kind to others. If Ted descends into the arms of someone with a reputation for instability, is it because Nicole's rejection is a wound that must be salved? Or because Ted, who has always negotiated danger like a gambler, is simply repeating a pattern of choosing what is dramatic over what is steady? The show wants us to ask whether love is a river that runs toward safety or a tide that returns to the same poisonous shore. Ted's self-hatred is articulate. He can list his mistakes like confessions at a church, the times he failed to speak, the times he chose comfort over confrontation, the times he believed that endurance was the same as devotion. That self-flagellation makes him vulnerable to Leslie's charms because it renders him pliable. She does not need to seduce him with fireworks, she seduces with acceptance. Acceptance, when chartered by someone who has been rejected, feels indistinguishable from love. Ted begins to question whether his feelings for Nicole are immutable or merely aesthetic beautiful, but perhaps not the architecture of his life. There is a moral question here that the story refuses to answer neatly. When a person loves someone who refuses them, is it worse to remain loyal to that unrequited devotion or to move on into a potentially compromising attachment? The soap's lovers are living moral philosophers. Their choices are case studies. Ted's flirtation with Leslie complicates the notion of fidelity. It is not that he stops loving Nicole, rather, he begins to reinterpret love as something that includes the permission to heal in another's arms. This is a dangerous line to draw because it suggests love is fungible, exchangeable when it becomes inconvenient. The show teases that such reinterpretation will have consequences. Meanwhile, Nicole is not static. She is vibrant and cautious, a complex woman who, even while making choices that seem risky, analyzes each breath of them. After Carlton, she returns home with a mixture of triumph and doubt. She tells herself that the experience liberated her in small ways. She slept without the weight of guilt as a blanket. She woke up and made coffee without performing emotional inventory. Yet there is a nagging sense that while she has reclaimed a piece of herself, she may have handed over another the right to feel surprised at her own vulnerability. She begins to notice things she had ignored before. The way Carlton's phone buzzes at odd hours, a name that lights across his screen like a small foreign constellation, the way his laugh changes when discussing certain business dealings. The gnawing thought that follows is simple and terrible. Perhaps she has traded one kind of loneliness for another, disguised as romantic novelty. At the same time, Dani watches her sister with complicated pride. She sees Nicole with a clarity that others miss, the way she moves between the luxurious life of Fairmont Crest and the private impoverishment of risk-taking that yields no lasting gains. Dani's push was meant as kindness, But she knows, in the quiet of night, that kindness sometimes looks like mischief. She begins to worry that her well-intentioned provocations have catalyzed more than Nicole bargained for. What does she do with that guilt? Does she apologize and reveal the pressure she put on Nicole's shoulders? Does she double down, insisting that her sister needed to be shaken awake? The social fallout continues to ripple outward. Friends pick sides, reputations are recalibrated, and old alliances reveal their seams. Conversations at charity luncheons become covert tribunals. People take Nicole's choice as a referendum on her character, and she faces a new kind of judgment, public and petty. The men who fought in each other's faces nurse their wounds and turn their grievances to private plotting. Leslie and Ted's closeness is whispered about in the halls. The world narrows to gossip and to the slow legalism of social reprisal. What remains in all this is the human cost. Nicole's willingness to sleep with Carlton was an attempt to reopen a shuttered heart, but that attempt was also a test of boundaries, personal, ethical, and communal. Ted's reaction to her choice reveals a man who counts emotional investments like currency, and when he loses, he wants restitution. Carlton's assertions of his right to court Nicole reveal that in modern romance people often try to defend themselves with contractual logic. Leslie's intervention transforms sorrow into strategic opportunity. Danny's mischievous push becomes the pebble that starts an avalanche. The morning after the fight leaves Fairmont Crest heavy with silence, as if the entire neighborhood is holding its breath. Everyone knows what happened, how Ted and Carlton's argument turned from words to fists, how the two men were pulled apart only when one of them, bloodied and shaking, muttered Nicole's name like a confession. The bruises fade, but the tension lingers like fog on the streets. In houses that thrive on gossip, silence is never just peace. It's the quiet before another scandal. Nicole feels the shift first. She senses it in the way people look at her, half with pity, half with curiosity. To the outside world, she's the woman who broke a triangle in two, the spark that lit the feud. But she knows it's not that simple. There's something deeper under the surface of what happened with Carlton, something that doesn't fit neatly into public opinion. When she closes her eyes, she remembers his tone, the things he let slip when he thought she wasn't listening. There's a pattern to his stories, a deliberate gap when he talks about where he's been, what he owns, who he knows. She feels the unease grow inside her like a whisper she can't shake. Carlton, meanwhile, plays the role of the wounded victor. He tells anyone who will listen that he didn't throw the first punch, that he simply defended his right to live freely, to love freely. He frames himself as the honest man caught in the web of others' insecurities. But behind closed doors, his calm is rehearsed. His apartment, usually spotless, has become a mess of documents and late-night calls. Something about him feels staged now, a man too careful, too managed. Nicole starts to wonder if Danny's push wasn't the start of her awakening, but the beginning of her entrapment. The tension between Nicole and Carlton grows sharper. He's affectionate, attentive even, but there's a new possessiveness in him. He wants to know where she is, who she's talking to, and when she'll be home. It isn't love, it's surveillance wrapped in charm. He says he's just being protective, that after the fight with Ted he can't risk losing her to more confusion. Nicole smiles when he says it, but inside she hears warning bells. Her intuition, dulled by desire before, begins to sharpen again. She starts digging, discreetly. Carlton once told her he worked in consulting, a vague term that could mean anything or nothing. One evening while he's showering, she checks his briefcase and finds papers she doesn't understand, offshore accounts, company names that don't exist on paper, a passport tucked behind a stack of receipts with a name that isn't his. The air goes thin around her. It's not just deceit, it's danger. She takes photos of everything and hides them on her phone. She knows she has to be careful, but she also knows she's already in too deep to walk away quietly. Danny notices the change in her sister, the way Nicole's voice trembles when she says she's fine, the way she keeps her phone close as if it's a weapon. Danny, who once believed in daring Nicole to live boldly, now feels the weight of what her advice has unleashed. For the first time, she admits to herself that her push might have been reckless. She begins to pay closer attention, watching Carlton at parties, listening to the way people mention his name in whispers that sound less like admiration and more like fear. When Danny hears that Carlton was seen arguing with a man from the real estate board, someone rumored to have vanished soon after, she decides she can't stay idle. She reaches out to Ted. Ted, still lost in his guilt, almost doesn't answer when Danny calls. He's been drifting through days, a man haunted by choices that have folded in on themselves. Leslie has been his shadow through it all, comforting, seductive, unpredictable. She claims to care for him, but she thrives on his weakness. She brings him drinks when he's sober, distractions when he tries to think. Ted tells himself he's in control, that she's just a friend easing his pain. But the truth is that Leslie knows exactly how to keep him tethered. She wants him angry. She wants him to need her, not Nicole. Danny's call jolts him out of his numbness. When she tells him what she's found, the false documents, the strange accounts, something in Ted wakes up. The fog lifts, replaced by a burning sense of purpose. He can't undo the past, but maybe he can protect Nicole from a mistake that could destroy her. He agrees to meet Danny and promises not to involve Leslie, though Leslie's instincts are too sharp for that to work for long. Leslie senses Ted pulling away, and jealousy begins to crack through her calm. She doesn't ask about Nicole directly, but she knows the silence between them carries her name. She starts following Ted, watching him from her car, the way she once watched him years ago when their affair had gone wrong. She's not insane, she tells herself. She's just making sure she's not being played again. But deep down she knows the truth. She's addicted to his chaos, to the possibility that she might still have a hold over him. Ted and Danny meet at a cafe outside town, where no one from Fairmont Crest goes unless they want to disappear for a few hours. Danny brings the photos Nicole took, the ones she managed to send before deleting the evidence. Ted studies them, the muscles in his jaw tightening. Offshore accounts, false identities, bank transfers that trace through shell corporations. It's worse than he expected. Carlton isn't just lying about who he is, he's running something big, something illegal. Ted realizes Nicole might already be in danger. They plan quietly. Ted will confront Carlton under the guise of reconciliation, while Danny will make sure Nicole stays safe. It sounds simple, but both of them know that in this world, nothing ever stays simple. Leslie, overhearing part of Ted's phone call later that night, realizes what's happening and decides she won't be left behind. She tells herself she's helping, but what she wants is to control the ending. Meanwhile, Nicole confronts Carlton about the passport. She does it calmly, pretending she stumbled upon it accidentally. His reaction is terrifying in its precision, not rage, but control. He laughs, kisses her forehead, tells her not to worry about things she doesn't understand. But his eyes betray him. That night, she hears him on the phone, speaking in low, rapid tones to someone who calls him by another name. The words contain the situation make her blood run cold. She realizes she needs to get out, not tomorrow, not after explanations, but now. Nicole calls Danny in a panic, whispering from the bathroom while the shower runs to mask her voice. Danny tells her to pack and meet her near the Dupree house in 30 minutes. But Carlton, always one step ahead, intercepts the message. He pretends to be asleep as she leaves, then follows. Ted, waiting nearby as part of the plan, sees Carlton's car tailing Nicole's. His heart jumps. He calls Danny, but she doesn't pick up. She's already on her way to intercept Nicole. Ted follows, headlights dimmed, a silent guardian shadowing the man who once stole the woman he loves. The chase ends near the old Dupree estate, where the woods begin. Nicole pulls over, thinking she's safe. Danny's car appears behind her, lights flashing softly as a signal. But before they can speak, Carlton steps out of the shadows. He's calm, too calm, holding the same charm that once seduced Nicole, now sharpened into menace. He accuses them of betrayal, of trying to frame him. His voice is silk over venom. Ted arrives moments later. The confrontation that follows is raw and desperate, not the fistfight of pride they had before, but a battle for truth. Ted shouts that he knows everything, the false identity, the money laundering, the lies. Carlton doesn't deny it. Instead, he smirks and says something that freezes Nicole where she stands, that everything he did was part of a bigger plan, one that involves people far more dangerous than any of them. He tells her she was never just a lover, she was a test, a cover, the perfect distraction. Nicole's heart breaks not with tears, but with silence. The realization that her brief attempt at liberation has been used as a weapon against her is unbearable. Danny steps forward, furious, but Carlton moves too fast. In the chaos, Ted lunges, a struggle breaking out under the dim light of the woods. The sounds are brutal fists, shouts, branches snapping. Nicole tries to stop them, but Danny pulls her back, whispering that they can't interfere. Then a single sound cuts through the fight, a gunshot. Time fractures. Carlton collapses, clutching his side. Ted stands frozen, his hands trembling, the gun lying in the dirt between them. For a moment, no one moves. Leslie appears at the edge of the clearing. She's been following Ted, of course. Her face is pale, but her eyes gleam with something unreadable. She steps forward, her voice eerily calm, saying they have to call for help. But when she bends to pick up the gun, Danny stops her. The next few minutes are chaos. Danny calls the police. Ted kneels beside Carlton, pressing on the wound, shouting that he didn't mean to shoot. Nicole can't speak. She just watches as everything collapses. Love, guilt, fear, all folding into one impossible moment. Leslie stands apart, silent now, calculating. By the time the sirens arrive, the truth is already tangled. Ted claims self-defense, but there are no witnesses to verify who pulled the trigger. Danny swears she saw the gun in Carlton's hand first, but the evidence is murky. Nicole gives her statement quietly, refusing to look at anyone. The once bright world of Fairmont Crest dissolves into a scandal that no one can escape. In the weeks that follow, Carlton survives but disappears into legal limbo. His lawyers appear from nowhere, his records vanish, and every attempt to trace his past leads to nothing. Ted faces charges, but public sympathy paints him as a tragic hero. Danny becomes Nicole's shield, keeping reporters away. But she can't protect her sister from the deeper wound, the loss of faith. Leslie becomes the wild card. She leaks parts of the story to the press, shaping it to her advantage. One article hints that she might have been the one who tipped off the authorities about Carlton's hidden crimes. Another claims she was seen meeting one of his associates afterward. Ted doesn't know what to believe anymore. He tries to cut ties with her, but Leslie reminds him she's the only one who stood by him when everyone else turned away. Her voice drips with both threat and devotion. Nicole, haunted by everything, starts keeping a journal. Her entries are fragmented memories of Danny's laughter, of Ted's eyes before the fight, of Carlton's hand on her shoulder before she knew who he really was. She writes to make sense of the chaos, to find a narrative where she isn't just collateral damage. In one entry, she writes, "Maybe the gates we walk through aren't made of iron or stone, but of choices. And maybe once we cross them, there's no going back." Months later, she receives an envelope with no return address. Inside is a photograph: Carlton in a foreign city, alive, standing beside someone she doesn't recognize. On the back, in neat handwriting, are two words: "Still watching." Nicole burns the photo, but the image stays with her. Danny urges her to leave town, to start fresh somewhere far away. Ted, now free but hollow, offers to go with her, to help her rebuild. She refuses gently. There's too much history between them, too many ghosts. Leslie vanishes not long after, her apartment empty, her phone disconnected. Life in Fairmont Crest resumes its surface calm. The parties return, the gossip shifts to new scandals, but underneath, the ground feels different. Nicole learns to walk again through the same streets, no longer trusting what lies beyond the gates of any home, any promise. She knows that the story isn't over, that Carlton's shadow, Leslie's secrets, and Ted's guilt will circle back one day. But for now, she breathes, standing in the quiet aftermath, aware that survival itself can be an ending and a beginning.